Jeremiah Knope, and this is episode number 10 in politics and the church as we consider some of the biblical issues at stake in the 2024 presidential election. Today, I want to talk about an issue that often goes overlooked in the political conversation, and that's what I'm calling the presidential company. Most of us know the proverb, you can judge a man by the company he keeps. In other words, if you want to discern who somebody is and where they're headed, pay attention to who their friends are. Like, what kind of people do they surround themselves with? What kind of people have access into their life? What kind of people do they seek out for wisdom and counsel and advice? What kind of people have influence over the decisions that they make? So these are important questions to ask when considering a person's moral character, and they are important questions to ask when considering a person's future political trajectory, for better or for worse. Now, we see examples of this all over the Bible. We see examples of political leaders like King Rehoboam, 1 Kings chapter 12, and King Ahab, 1 Kings chapter 22. Kings who rejected the advice of those who saw the world differently than them, and instead they surrounded themselves with yes men. And you could see the trajectory of political ruin ahead of time just by looking at the people who were part of their political team. And on the other hand, we see examples like King Josiah, who was surrounded by godly counselors and whose reign was one of the most significant in all of Israel's history. That to say, the company that you keep really matters. Either it will make you a better person and a better leader, Proverbs 12:15, or that company will aid in your corruption as a person and as a leader, 1 Corinthians 15:33. So as we approach the 2024 presidential election in just a few short days, perhaps you're still unsure of who to vote for based on the moral character of the two individual presidential candidates. Now, when you consider them as individuals only, many Americans are choosing not to vote because they both seem equally as bad. I don't like him. I don't like her. And so I'm not going to vote for either. But what's missing in this logic is the fact that you're not just voting for the person at the top of the ticket. You are also voting for the thousands of other people who the incoming president will appoint into key roles of government, like the Supreme Court justices. We don't live in a monarchy. We don't live underneath a dictatorship. This is a democratic republic in which the president of the United States is accompanied by a team of leaders. And so, as Christians and as American citizens, one of the most important things to be looking for in a presidential election is who the two candidates have chosen to surround themselves with. Who is excited to be on their team? And who has been invited to be on their team, to share the platform with them? And what do they bring to the table? Not how popular are they on social media. What do they bring to the table? And if I wasn't convinced by anything else that we've looked at so far, this is what would compel me to vote for this candidate instead of this candidate. All right, some examples. On the one side, you have a running mate, Vance, who has demonstrated a level of economic intelligence and conversational winsomeness That is so rare on the political debate stage. And on the other side, you have a running mate, Walz, who just scored the lowest fiscal rating of any state in the entire country. And while one of these guys was serving as a Marine in the Iraq War, the other guy decided to retire from the National Guard right before his battalion was scheduled to deploy to Iraq. Who's on your team? On the one side, you have guys like RFK, who have founded organizations devoted to improving the health of our children. And on the other side, you have guys who have devoted their entire professional career to the sexual revolution of our children. Who's on your team? On the one side, you have guys like Elon Musk, who's devoted his wealth to purchasing a social media platform so that American citizens have somewhere they can go to exercise their freedom of speech so that it's not censored. And on the other side, you have guys like the Soros family who just purchased over 200 radio stations in order to censor the message that is going out across the radio waves. But who's on your team? On the one side, you have women who have served in this country's armed forces. And on the other side, you have women who have been scrutinized by the FBI for compromising the security of our country. On the one side, you have people like Vivek who are actively seeking to protect our children from harmful influences like TikTok. And on the other side, you have people like pop country singers who have made their wealth off of impressionable young men and women and children. On the one side, you have journalists like Tucker Carlson who are using their influence to share the incredibly important stories that the mainstream media would never touch. And on the other side, you have uber successful podcasters who have a significant influence in pop culture but have no journalistic integrity whatsoever. On the one side, you have guys who have donated their personal wealth to building the American dream. And on the other side, you have guys who have used their position in American government at the highest level to build their own private wealth. Who's on the different teams? On the one side, you have guys who are giving our country resources like Starlink satellites and X. And on the other side, you have guys who have only used their personal wealth for self-serving purposes. And guys like the Minnesota governor who is using my tax dollars to ensure that our public school boys' bathrooms are stocked with tampons. Who's on your team? On the one side, you have people advocating for a country to be pro-life, like Vivek. And on the other side, you have people who are advocating for a mother's right to murder the child in her womb, like Beyonce. You have one candidate who has built an echo chamber surrounding herself with people who think just like she does. Now she's running on a platform of change, but she's been in the White House for 4 years almost, and she has surrounded herself currently with people who are planning to join her in continuing to steer the ship in the direction it's already going, just at a faster pace. This team, on the other hand, you have a candidate who has surrounded himself with people who are united in their love and devotion and sacrifice, personal sacrifice to this country, but who also have diverse ideologies. It's a team that has an incredible diversity of strengths, which is something that we have never seen in our lifetime. I mean, it almost looks like a modern version of Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals, which was absolutely the key to his historic success as our 16th president. People are constantly referring to it as the real life Avengers or the Justice League or the Dream Team. Now, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, there has never been a transition team in our generation like this one. Now, it's an interesting election season, to say the very least. You have historic Republicans voting Democrat. You have historic Democrats voting Republican. You have conservative pastors endorsing the Democrat Party. You have conservative pastors endorsing the Republican Party. You have one campaign team. So who's on your team? You have one campaign team planning visits to abortion clinics and LGBTQ podcasts and drag queen shows. And you have one campaign team planning visits to McDonald's and garbage truck rallies. I mean, it's very interesting. But most importantly, we have one candidate who is welcoming Christians to join him at the table in the White House, a candidate who has already shown in this current election that he is willing to be swayed by the wisdom and counsel of those around him, including Christians. His team has the intellectual firepower, the economic track record, and the moral compass that has the potential of making these next 4 years a really exciting chapter in our country, in our country's history. And then we have a candidate who has made it abundantly clear that there is no place for Bible-believing Christians on her team. No exceptions. So whatever you might think about the two candidates and their personal history or their moral integrity, look at the two teams. What voices are they listening to? And are Christians welcome into the political conversation? Don't just look at Rehoboam, and don't just look at Josiah. Look at the people around them. And then go vote.